Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Kern. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. The trade deadline has come and gone. We have reached the month of August. The playoff push is officially on. Only 2 months remain in the regular season. So we have a lot of trades to talk about today. Not quite going to get to all of them because this trade deadline, it was a very active one, but the big move never really happened. I think the big move was more with prospects and return prices than it was for, the big superstar established major leaguer that was traded.
Yeah, I would agree for the most part. Yeah, like especially name wise, like not a lot of huge names went out there. Maybe some guys who are better, or maybe some guys who are kind of underrated and people aren't realizing how good they are yet. Maybe some of those guys, but no big splashes. Also, Crochet and Luis Robert didn't move. Tarek Skubal didn't move. Those were the three biggest rumored guys, and they did not go anywhere. For the most part, rightfully so. But yeah, there were a lot of it was described as a seller's market. So yeah, a lot of the returns for some of these players was talked about, like, oh wow, they might be setting themselves up pretty well here. But yeah, the first trade we wanted to get into is maybe one of the more odd trades of the trade deadline, and that was Isaac Paredes being traded to the Cubs for Christopher Morel. I forget if there were other
2 more prospects.
Yeah, it was not a 1-for-1 trade, but the main 2 pieces to go were Christopher Morel of the Chicago Cubs, third baseman, and the third baseman from the Rays, originally from the Rays, Isaac Paredes. There's a there's a lot to get into here, specifically analytically, but what did you think about this move?
I loved it for Tampa. I will certainly tell you that Christopher Morel is in his third, I guess you could call it, full big league season. He had over 400 plate appearances, but didn't qualify in both 2022 and 23. So pace to qualify for the batting title for the first time, and he's been a pretty decent bat. Obviously, a lot of improvements that need to be made, especially with strikeouts, especially with walks in some cases. And his batting average has been down this year. The walks have actually been good this year, but strikeouts have been an issue for him. He's hitting the ball hard a lot. He has 20 home runs this year, 62 career home runs in 327 games. That is 31 home runs on a 162 game average. So, I mean, already a lot that's already in place with Christopher Morel. And he's also top 10 in the league in bat speed, which is very exciting for a lot of people. He's 25 years old, so I feel like this is one of those situations where it's like, oh, let's see if the Rays can get more out of him. So I figure we should start with Morel just kind of briefly, because I think we're going to be spending a lot of this segment talking about Isaac Paredes.
Yeah, right, exactly. And for Morel, and this sort of ties into the Paredes thing, but with Morel, it's beneficial for him to leave Wrigley Field, and it makes sense for the Cubs to maybe move on from him, because his hitting style doesn't necessarily translate into Wrigley Field as much as it would particularly like your average ballpark. He is a big pull hitter, also a big fly ball hitter. Much of his offensive production is going to come off of his power here. He's a slugger. He usually has an above average strikeout rate, in which he strikes out more than league average typically, but he's going to have that power. He's 82nd percentile in barrel rate. You mentioned that bat speed, that's going to contribute to that as well, and he's always had pretty above average exit velocity numbers. But yeah, he'll tend to put the ball in the air. I want to see where he's at for for where he ranks in terms of pulled fly balls, because he does have a very, very high pull rate. And yeah, if we take a look here, it's probably up there, right? Command.
I'll let you get in on that.
He is 33rd out of 196 in rate of batted balls that are pulled fly balls.
Yeah.
Which is, that's top 20%. So, and yeah, he usually does that at a high exit velocity. So, it's going to play well in Tropicana Field, most likely, more so than it did in Wrigley Field.
Yeah, so now that gets into Yusei Paredes, who is a much more extreme version of Christopher Morel. I mean, they're the same age. They're both 25. Both of them have a lot of control. So the Cubs are going to have this guy for a while. I cannot, for the life of me, understand why the Cubs made this trade. It doesn't make really much sense to me. If you understand who Yusei Paredes is, you know that Wrigley Field is maybe the worst ballpark aside from Baltimore for him to do his thing. So Yusei Paredes, he's a guy that very famously has a lot of discrepancies between his expected statistics and his actual statistics, especially with slugging percentage. This year he is slugging 423. His expected slugging is 347. So that's like an 80% difference. Last year was even crazier. He slugged 488 and had a 369 expected slugging. So again, he outperformed his expectations quite severely. But this doesn't really say much about the sustainability of his game. It's because expected statistics don't take into account what part of the field you hit the ball to. So if you hit a 340-foot fly ball, expected statistics will consider every 340-foot fly ball. And obviously, if you hit one of those down the left field or right field line, it's probably a home run. If you hit it to center field, it's probably a fly out. So when you see those fly balls and they have an expected batting average of like 180, it's because they're considering the ones to center field that are never home runs. But if they actually specified the part of the field it would hit it to, it would be a much higher expected batting average, but that's not the case. And because of that, Yusei Paredes has very misleading expected statistics. And that is because he is pretty much the god of pulled fly balls in Major League Baseball today. In 2024, he has a 30% fly ball rate, a higher fly ball rate than ground ball rate, despite the ground ball rate on league average being 21% higher. His pull rate, the league average is 37%. His this year is 52%. The rate of fly balls being pulled is 26% for the league. This year, it's 49.5% for him. So Yusei Paredes makes a living off of hitting pulled fly balls as well as anybody in baseball. And because of it, he kind of reaps the rewards of it by hitting a lot of home runs, right? He hit 31 of them last year. He's hit 16 of them this year. And he was able to do that largely because Tropicana Field is 315 down the left field line. It has that really short wall where the 162 landing is. The regular left field wall is not particularly large. At Wrigley Field, it's 355 down the left field line because that wall extends out like 10 to 20 feet between where it is and left center. So a lot of what Yusei Paredes has made himself successful in, it's not going to play in Wrigley Field. And I just don't understand why the Cubs would trade for a guy that doesn't have the offensive profile to play in your ballpark.
Yeah, it's very confusing. And yeah, we mentioned that Christopher Morel has the 33rd highest rate of batted balls be pulled fly balls. Yusei Paredes is second on that list. He is the prime example of someone who is just, he has a slow pitch softball style of hitting. He just tries to pull it down the line. He's not necessarily ahead of it. It's a strategy that he pulls off, and he's pulled it off pretty well because he's someone who doesn't necessarily have high exit velocity numbers, but he's able to hit home runs because of this way he goes about things. And just to kind of visually support this, I have a graph of all of his fly balls from this year and where they are in consideration to Wrigley Field. Go to the Above Replacement Radio YouTube channel. But yeah, it is a heavy bias to the left side, and virtually all of his home runs are pulled. And yes, a good amount of them do go out at Wrigley, but less than they would at Tropicana. And statistically speaking, you know, luckily we have these things provided for us. But he has 16 home runs this year. If he played every single game at Wrigley Field, he'd only have 11. Obviously, no one out there plays every single game at their home stadium, but still it provides context where over a full season, where he's going to have a full season because he's not a free agent next year, potentially he's going to be missing out on 5 or 6 home runs a year because he's at a stadium that he should not be playing at. Really, just how it should go. So I don't know if this will change his approach at all. But it probably shouldn't. He should probably. This is what he
No.
does best. It's just an unfortunate. It's an unfortunate thing for Isaac Paredes ultimately, and yeah, it's weird that the Cubs did this. Absolutely, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, no matter where you play your home games, unless it's Baltimore, I mean, your best option is always to pull fly balls as much as you can. Um, but I just hope the Cubs don't expect the same production out of him if none of the underlying stuff changes, because that's just not a good thing to expect. I think there's still room for improvement. I mean, you look at last year when he hit 31 home runs, he did that despite an average exit velocity below 87 miles an hour. The league average is 88. So I mean, if he hits the ball harder and keeps up that pace, like he's a 40 home run guy, and he hasn't done that. Maybe that's something that the Cubs are hoping to fix. I don't know. This year, his average exit velocity is actually 84.8 miles per hour, which is a lot lower, which kind of explains the lower pace of home runs for him. Is really just he isn't hitting it hard enough. But, I mean, I think the approach will stay the same. I think it should stay the same. I feel bad for Isaac Paredes in this situation because he had no decision of where he wanted to go. And unfortunately for him, it just happened to be one of the most hurtful ballparks for his play style.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just taking a look here. Yeah, he'll be there for, as long as the Cubs decide they want to have control over him, he will be there for 3 more years after this. So hopefully there's the adjustment is okay and he's still able to hit most of his potential home runs out of there. But yeah, it's definitely not a great thing for him in his career.
There's so many
Yeah,
narratives. There's so many narratives of like, oh, like we're this guy's prime is being wasted because he's on this team, whether it be like Mike Trout with the Angels, Felix Hernandez with the Mariners, Luis Robert with the White Sox. But it's like, no, we're literally like getting robbed of prime Isaac Paredes because because he's playing in a ballpark where a lot of home runs are going to become doubles or flyouts.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's a weird thing.
You just gotta hope that the wind's blowing out there.
Yeah, it's exactly. And it's a weird thing that the Cubs are, they not only gave up Morel for him, but they gave up prospects for him as well. I'm not sure. I haven't like looked into them, but with the quality of the prospects, but you figure the Rays should be the one in this scenario trading away the most value, but no, it is it was the Cubs. So yeah, shout out to the Rays on that. From the optics of right now, obviously it's not set in stone or anything close to set in stone, but it looks like they're winning the trade right now. They definitely have the advantage in our opinions. Anything more on the Paredes Morel trade?
No, I think we kind of touched on everything. I'm sure he will still. I'm not rooting against Isaac Paredes by any means. I hope he does well. I just, I have a hard time believing that he will have the same level of success in Chicago that he did in, say, 2023 or even 2022.
Yeah, exactly. And it's weird, the Rays. We were scratching our heads wondering why they traded Austin Meadows for this guy, and it
Yeah.
worked out really well for them. And it
The trade tree is from Archer to Meadows to Paredes to Morel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the Rays. No one is just let go in free agency. Everyone has to be traded.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Rays were very active in the trade deadline. We talked about them last episode where they gave up Randy Rosarena. Obviously, we just talked about them with them getting Christopher Morel and trading Isaac Paredes. They also traded Jason Adam, which was part of a big shipment of relievers heading over to San Diego, and the Padres, who are in the comfortably kind of in the fifth seed in that NL playoff race. Yeah, so the Padres got Jason Adam alongside Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing. What did you think about the Padres building up that bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how just like AJ Preller found like the unlimited prospect glitch a few years ago, and just no matter what, they always have the prospects to get whoever they need to get, right? It was Yu Darvish and Blake Snell, sort of in the beginning of their window. It was Juan Soto, it was Dylan Cease recently, and plenty of others, Luis Arraez back in May, and now Tanner Scott, Jason Adam, Brian Hoeing, and that was it for their additions. But that goes along with Robert Suarez. It goes along with Adrian Morejon, our favorite guy Yuki Matsui, as well as Jeremiah Estrada, who is broken out for them this year. So I mean, the Padres bullpen right now looks like, in terms of namesake, it's one of the best in the league.
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely supplements what they had last year with Josh Hader. Now they just have just kind of a full stable, not to steal Kevin Cash's phrase, but
Yeah.
a full stable of dudes who can get guys out. It seems like it's at a certain point heading into the playoffs, they're probably gonna have to like leave one or two of them out for whatever reason. Whereas, the most teams would have everyone on that in that bullpen. But yeah, I'm trying to look at where they're, because I feel like as I recall with the Padres, I don't recall them having necessarily bullpen issues. It's just they decided to strengthen it even more. Padres were 18th in bullpen ERA, but they definitely had a discrepancy with their FIP. They're currently seventh in bullpen FIP, and that's mostly without their additions. So it seems like that they're going to be one of the strongest bullpens heading into the playoffs if they do make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know that Tanner Scott did give up a home run last night to former Marlin Jacob Stallings, but there's definitely a lot of optimism. He's been very good with FIP in particular this year. Yeah, and they traded quite the price to get Scott and Brian Hoeing, which we can talk about later. But barring a couple injuries that the Padres are waiting on returns from, this looks like a very complete team going into the playoffs. Going into the year, their lineup looked like it had a lot of holes when you looked beyond, like Ha-Sung Kim, Tatis, Manny Machado, and Xander Bogaerts. But I mean, like Jurickson Profar has stepped up massively for them this year. Cronenworth has still been doing his thing. Jackson Merrill looks very good. And they're waiting on Tatis to get back, and they obviously traded for Luis Arraez. But I mean, you have legit major leaguers that are worth fearing in any capacity, kind of down the lineup right now, outside of maybe the catcher position. But I mean, at full strength, you have Arraez at DH. You have Profar, Merrill, and Tatis in the outfield. Left to right or right to left in the infield, you have Cronenworth, Bogarts, Kim, Machado, and catcher you have either Higashioka or Campusano. But in the rotation, it's Cease, it's Darvish when he gets off the restricted list, Musgrove when he gets off of the injured list, plus Waldron, plus Michael King, bullpen we just mentioned. So I mean, this looks like a team that doesn't have a ton of holes at full strength right now.
Right, exactly. There's a reason why we were optimistic about this team heading into the year. And we can talk about how disappointing they were last year. They were potentially NL West favorites last year, but they underperformed their Pythagorean win-loss by a lot, and they had a solid roster, and they still do, and they bolstered it at the trade deadline. Yeah, with Tanner Scott, he started out the year rough underline wise. Like, his run prevention has always been good throughout the year, but underline wise, he did not look great to start the year. Had like a 20% walk rate to start the year, but he's kind of transformed back into the reliever that kind of took the world by storm last year. In his last 28 appearances, he has a 2.66 FIP, and that is because of a 35% strikeout rate and 9% walk rate. So it's back, that walk rate is back down. And also, even with the home run he allowed last night, he's only allowed 2 home runs in his last 29 and 2/3 innings pitched. So he's also, he's just overall, he's had soft contact, low barrel rates and stuff like that, which was what kind of attracted us to him, and highlighting him last year. Was he had a very, very red Savant page, allowing a lot of soft contact, getting strikeouts at a very high rate. Just everything was clicking for him last year, and it seems like he's kind of gotten back to that since about mid-May. So it looks like a pretty solid addition for the Padres. I haven't looked too much into Jason Adam this year, but I see he has a 3.39 expected ERA. Like that's also going to be a good addition for them too.
Yeah, no, I mean it's an exciting time because, I mean, obviously you want to have as much optimism as possible for the future if you're the Padres. We were kind of down on what their future looked like for a while, but like we said, AJ Preller found the endless prospect glitch.
Yes, yes,
And
indeed.
on top of all this, they still have Ethan Salas, they still have DeVries, who's looked good for them this year. So, and it's interesting, I saw a tweet, and I think it makes a lot of sense, saying like the Padres, they draft for ceiling because they're not going to develop most of these guys, and they sign for ceiling because they're not going to play most of these guys. They're going to be trade chips.
Yeah, exactly. And
Ethan Salas seems like he might be the outlier, which when you're an 18-year-old catcher in Double A, I think that's perfectly valid.
um, yeah, right. And
Yeah.
and yeah, with they also don't draft or sign for position. They have, 5 shortstops on their team or whatever. They got a shortstop in right field, and well, when he's healthy, but shortstop in right field, shortstop in center field, shortstop at second base, shortstop at third base. They kind of just have the best players on their team,
Mhm.
and don't really account for that stuff. But yeah, it definitely, considering what the options were on the market realistically for anyone that was buying, there were certain avenues teams could go, and bolstering up the bullpen seemed like a decent move. It wasn't like there was a plethora of starters out there. It wasn't like there was a plethora of bats out there. But bullpen arms always seem somewhat available. So in a market that's kind of shallow, why not just get, 3 relievers to help your team and not really worry about anything else? Because everything else seems okay.
Yeah, no, I mean this Padres team, the thing that we've learned about the playoffs last year is that you really just got to get there. Doesn't matter what seed you are. Doesn't matter if you win the division or not. Because like we've seen, especially in the National League, right? I mean, we've seen the 6 seed go to the World Series 2 years in a row. We saw the 5 and 6 seeds go to the NLCS 2 years ago. One of them being the Padres. So, once we get to October, this feels like a team that could pretty easily make a run, especially because no one has really been particularly outstanding, really in all of baseball this year. I mean, you look at the top teams in the league. The Phillies have been playing 500 ball for like 2 months. The Yankees have been one of the worst teams in the league since mid-June. The Orioles have been kind of right there with them. Uh, Cleveland has been fine, I guess. I mean, they're really the only ones, but they still didn't have those kinds of massive expectations. The Braves have been under 500 for the last like month and a half. The Dodgers have been not super impressive. So, I mean, the Padres, if they can get hot at the right time, it feels like this is a team where you can't really confidently put anyone over them at full strength.
Right. And I think I saw a tweet earlier that like no one is on pace for 100 wins this year, which
Mm-hmm.
the last time that happened, the last time a season ended with no one over 100 wins was 2014, 10 years ago. So yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any necessarily any dominance going on right now in the league, as you just kind of pointed out. Everyone's kind of going through their upswings and downswings. We were expecting dominance from the Braves and Dodgers, but not necessarily too many other teams necessarily. Maybe the Orioles a little bit,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like I think I think yeah, like another thing I wanted to say, maybe a little bit off topic, but I kind of got into this on Twitter last year. There's always a stereotype around the trade deadline of like, oh, you need to stack up your starting rotation, or oh, you need to stack up your bullpen. Like the look at the 2015 Royals, you got to have a
Oh
good
my God,
bullpen.
it's always the 2015 Royals and never the teams that tried to emulate the 2015 Royals.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Shout out to the 2018 Rockies or
Shout out
whatever.
to the 2018 Rockies, the 20 you could even to a degree say like Tony La Russa era White Sox too.
Little bit, yeah, a little bit, but yeah, ultimately it's about to win, you need to score more runs than the other team, and that can come in any
Huge
manner.
if true. Huge
You
if
can
true.
be it can be by having a great starting rotation, it can be by having a great bullpen, but like ultimately, whatever strategy gets you ahead of the other team, that's what you need to do. And offense has been that thing for a lot of different teams. I think I think um, three of the last seven World Series championship, three of the last seven World Series champions have led the MLB in runs scored, and I think maybe one team has led in team ERA, and zero teams have led in starter ERA or something like that. Maybe one team has led in starter ERA. I had the stat last year. There's a tweet I had last year, but ultimately, like, look at the Rangers last year. They did not have a good bullpen. They had a decent starting staff, but their offense rocked, and they scored over 6 runs per game in the playoffs. So let's
They
not forget.
slugged too. Like the Diamondbacks had a higher batting average and a lower ERA in the World Series.
Yeah, yeah,
They lost in
exactly,
5. And
exactly.
people never really talked about that.
Right, exactly. So like, so yeah, you know, don't think that because you don't have a stacked rotation or stacked bullpen heading into the playoffs that, you're not going to succeed in there, because a lot of the time,
It's the team who
offense
hits more
will
home
win
runs. Yeah.
yeah, offense will win championships. Shout 93 Blue Jays, 2018 Red Sox, that's kind of the 2023 Rangers. That's kind of what it was.
I guess you could put like a exception with the 2022 Astros just because that bullpen was so ridiculous.
Oh yeah, definitely there are
Yeah.
times where the pitching where teams win with superior pitching. It's just not all the time, and I feel like the
Yeah.
narrative is
Is that
every
it's all the time. It's
that
always
it's all
pitching
the
and
time.
defense, right? Yeah.
Like look at the 19 Nationals, dominant pitching staff, and they were fair and square. Like they earned that. It wasn't a lucky it
Their
wasn't
bullpen, they
lucky.
had like the worst bullpen in the league
Yeah,
for
worst
like
bullpen in
much
the
of the
league,
season.
but they had a stacked.
And their big addition was Daniel Hudson, who turned out to be a big addition, but certainly was not seen as such a thing at the time.
Yeah, exactly. But, they had a great starting rotation and they won on starters, but that's not how you win it, every time. Some teams win it on offense, some teams win it on bullpen, some teams win it on starting pitching. A lot of teams, they kind of are well versed in all of them. But that's the end of my tangent. But yeah, um going from the Padres stacked bullpen where they um picked up a player from a pitcher from the Marlins. What other Marlins action were we going to talk about, or was
I want to talk about just the trades that they made. They traded, I believe, 9 major leaguers just on trade deadline day alone. Um, I want to say is what it was. I
yeah,
know,
that
but I
seems
could be
right.
wrong. They traded basically everyone except for Jake Berger. Sorry, Jake Berger, you're still there. Um,
Hmm.
Going into this season, according to Baseball America, the Marlins had the 27th ranked farm system, and haven't been ranked in the top 10 on Baseball America since 2021. And they haven't been in the top, well, they've been in the top 20, but they've been 20th and 20th again in the previous 2 years before this one. After this trade deadline, they have acquired their number 5 prospect, their number 6 prospect, their number 8 prospect, their number 9 prospect, their number 10 prospect, their number 16 prospect, and more, and more in this list. So I mean, heck of a job by Peter Bendix in his first trade deadline with the team. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to just let every single person that you can go when it's your first year with an organization and you haven't built up any sort of personal emotional connections with any of these people. But I mean, I think they did a really nice job. I'm very excited to see what like the future potential lineups look like for this team. I mean, you have Augustin Ramirez, who they traded for who they got for Jazz Chisholm, was looked at by Baseball America. Prospect that was traded. He's a fringe top 100 guy. They got Connor Norby from the Orioles in exchange in part for Trevor Rogers. Adam Mazur, Robbie Snelling they got in the Tanner Scott trade. Davey Sunday Los Santos, I mentioned last week, they got for AJ Puck. They also got Graham Pauley from the Padres in exchange for Tanner Scott. So, I mean, I gotta tip my cap to Peter Bendix on the job that he did this deadline.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they needed a full kind of restructure, and that's what they got this trade deadline. And yeah, in terms of the full list of guys that they traded, you mentioned a lot of them. AJ Puck, Jazz Chisholm, Brian Hoeing, Tanner Scott, Brian De La Cruz, Waskar Brazoban,
Yeah.
JT Charzois, Josh Bell, Trevor Rogers, and or no, they got that guy, but Trevor Rogers as well, in which they, by all kind of accounts, totally stole, Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers from the Orioles in
Yeah, I didn't
exchange
even
for
mention
Trevor
I didn't even
Rogers.
mention Stowers. Yeah, who's not a prospect anymore, but yeah, another young piece added to the Marlins organization.
Yeah, yeah, and for like considering the value that Trevor Rogers provides in the year 2024, that was very shocking to see. Everyone was talking about how interesting of a trade that was, to say the least. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Orioles are very low on those guys, um,
I
but
mean, I
I
think
mean,
this is their year and they want to just go for it because it's not like they're just because I mean they kind of also for right now have the endless prospect glitch. Not that they've had it over a sustained period of time like the Padres, but it's not like they're losing a big part of their potential future by trading guys like Norby or Stowers. There's other guys in the organization that they can easily fill in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm curious, if Rogers has um anything in particular that stands out particularly to Baltimore.
His strikeout to walk ratio numbers have been good even in the years where he's struggled. And I think the idea that Baltimore has is that we can limit the home runs, with that wall. And it didn't work out in his first start. He got torched in his first start as an Oriole, but I mean he's controllable, and I think there's still some optimism there.
Right, right, exactly. And yeah, going back to the endless prospect glitch, it's like, you know, if the Orioles have a top 100 prospect, it inherently holds less value to them than it would a team with a lesser farm system, because the Orioles are in a competitive window right now, and also they just have a lot of their positions filled for a while, considering everyone who's come up recently or is coming up. Um, they just have the field kind of filled, at least position player wise. So um, if there's, you can't have seven outfielders on a team. So I think they're just willing to kind of dish out guys,
It felt
because
like
they
if they
just
made
don't
this
fit the,
trade, yeah,
the
it felt like
mold.
if they made this trade like 2 months ago, they probably could have gotten the other Marlins lefty,
Um,
that being Jesus Luzardo.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah. They could have, for that value, probably could have done that.
But the
Yeah.
market was just so inflated for sellers.
Yeah. Yeah. There were a lot of those deals where, like, man, if they made this deal a month ago, what would have happened? But I don't know. You never quite know about those
That's
things.
why that's why I wonder with the Marlins. Like I wonder if Peter Bendix regrets trading Luis Arise back in May and not doing
Yeah.
it now. Not that he could have foreseen it, but it feels like, especially from the Padres, they could have gotten more for Arise. Coming off of an All Star appearance, which he probably still could have gotten in Miami, right? I mean, who was the Marlins All Star this year?
It's a good question.
I feel like I should know that. I'm sure he was just traded.
I don't think
Wasn't it?
Tanner Scott went.
What's that?
I don't
No, it
think
was
Tanner
Tanner
Scott.
Scott. It was Tanner Scott.
Oh, it
It
was.
was just him. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Arise could have. Yeah, Arise could have been in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Marlins had quite the fire sale, took advantage of the seller's market. And yeah, another team who took advantage of the seller's market was the Toronto Blue Jays, who shipped out Yusei Kikuchi for a couple, really highly prized prospects in the Houston Astros system. What did you think about this little move?
This one definitely, I think, may have shocked me more than any other return that happened on any trade. So Yusei Kikuchi, I think, is a very good pitcher. I think gets a bit underrated, and I think is maybe going to be one of the top pitchers on the free agent market next year. That being said, he is still going to be a free agent. So you're only trading for this guy for 2 months. You figure he's going to make about 7 to 8 starts. The Astros traded. They traded they traded Jake Bloss, who is a 23-year-old starting pitcher, the number 2 prospect in their organization at the time, according to Baseball Reference. Joey Loperfido, who is an outfielder slash first baseman, and then Will Wagner, the son of Billy Wagner, who is an infielder. So I do want to talk first about Joey Loperfido. I know he wasn't necessarily the headliner of this return, but being that he played in AAA this year, we have StatCast data for him. So I do want to kind of touch on that because he really impressed me before he got his call up this year when I was checking some of the AAA leaderboards. So in AAA this season, um, Joey Loperfido had, hang on a second, he had a 272 batting average with a 254 expected batting average. He had a 568 slugging with a 527 expected slugging and an average exit velocity of 90.8 miles an hour. He had a 30% fly ball rate, and the average exit velocity on his fly balls was 98.8 miles per hour, which would be like top 10 in Major League Baseball this year. I do have a bit of a disclaimer. This does come with a slight bit of an asterisk because all of this took place in the Pacific Coast League, which, if you don't know, is like a hitter's paradise in the minor leagues. The league-wide OPS in the Pacific Coast League is 820, and the league-wide ERA is 569. So these numbers might be a bit inflated because they happen in the Pacific Coast League, but there's still a lot of excitement around, a 25-year-old guy that can play multiple positions that you just got for a rental pitcher.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah, like Kikuchi's pretty good, but yeah, as you mentioned, there's 2 months of him. To kind of go with the Kikuchi thing, and maybe this is a dated discussion to have, but people might point at, mid fours ERA or even consider upper fours ERA. He's better than that, and his underlying stuff has shown that. Currently, he has a strikeout minus walk rate of about 21%. League average is around 14%, and his home run rate is not great, but it's not necessarily a disaster. So like that leads to him having a FIP and expected ERA under 4, which is where you want it to be. It means it's probably better than average. But yeah, it's quite the package for a guy who's not necessarily going to be your 1 or 2 starter most likely. It's probably Framber and Verlander ahead of him.
Yeah, whenever Verlander comes back.
Yeah, if I had to
if
guess.
if he comes back.
True, exactly. But
neck discomfort.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it's sort of a situation like last year with the Astros where like, windows kind of closing. I guess you overpay for a starter because starting pitching is a glaring need for them right now. And there weren't really a lot of starting pitchers out there on the market. So they took one, they overpaid for him, and they'll figure out the mess in 2027 or whatever. But yeah, it it's something where if you're the Astros, you hope it pays off for you. You hope that Kikuchi pitches to his underlying numbers or even better. But yeah, I mean the Blue Jays kind of took advantage here because they know that they're not necessarily going to compete this year. They're not necessarily in extension talks with Yusei Kikuchi, so they went out and took advantage and got some guys who could prove valuable in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I mean Kikuchi is, certainly a much needed upgrade for this team in the rotation, because you figure I don't know how many years this team has left in their competitive window. But every year they appear weaker and weaker. but they'll still find their way into the playoffs. They'll still find their way to the ALCS. But it's kind of unknown how long this will go on for, right? I mean, Alex Bregman's likely leaving next year. Kyle Tucker, unfortunately, we don't really know what the timetable is for him at this point. So you need as much bolsters as possible, and that's definitely something that Kikuchi can provide, especially while you're waiting for a lot of your mainstream pitchers to come back from Tommy John surgery, right? Guys like Luis Garcia, guys like Christian Javier, guys like Lance McCullers, it's healthy. Guys like Jose Urquidy. This is a good stopgap for the time being, even if it did cost you quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like they were out of all the teams competing right now, they were one of the teams that needed starting pitching the most. They're very opposite from their competitors in the AL West with the Mariners. The Mariners, they would be the last team looking for starting pitching right now, and the first team looking for bats, whereas the Astros are quite the opposite. But yeah, shout out to the Blue Jays for getting Mr. Loperfido, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Loperfido as well as Bloss. Also, just looking at some of Loperfido's major league stats this year, because he has played, enough for the both Blue Jays and Astros now. Obviously, the on-surface numbers aren't very good, but a 47.2% sweet spot rate, 91st percentile sprint speed, above average bat speed. These are things that can be worked out. All the problems there are, like a 40% strikeout rate, a 35% whiff rate, a 33% chase rate, and all the expected stuff, like that can be figured out with time while he adjusts to the major leagues. But there's a good foundation right here with the way he's been hitting so far.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And I guess there's not much I can say necessarily about Bloss. I haven't about Jake Bloss. I haven't necessarily dove into him, but I think a lot of people are excited about him because he has a 1.91 ERA in the minors. But I don't know, like, I see a guy with 9.1 strikeouts per nine and three and a half walks per nine. I'm curious as to how he's going to translate at the major league level, or at least with the tools that he has now. Obviously, he can develop. He's only 23 years old, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be someone that's going to have immediate success in the majors, considering he's not necessarily striking out the world or preventing walks at a high rate. It seems like he has a great
Keeping the ball in the yard.
of keeping the ball in the yard. As
Yeah.
In 84 innings, he's only allowed 3 home runs. So that's good, but who knows the sustainability of that? Typically, out of the 3 underlying things, strikeouts, walks, and home runs, have the most variance. So, we'll see. I think a lot of Astros fans were worried about letting go of Bloss because of the ERA, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to keep itself low, especially that low. When he gets to the majors. He has I know only 11 and 2/3 innings pitched, but he has a 6.94 ERA in the majors so far. But yeah, anything more on the Yusei Kikuchi deal?
No, nothing too bad, nothing too crazy. Also, not that this is probably just an afterthought in terms of this trade, but kind of crazy that they traded the son of one of the franchise's best players in this deal as well.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, I didn't know Will Wagner was Billy Wagner's son. I'm only aware of Kaysen Wagner, the starting pitcher for Miller School of Albemarle in Charlottesville, Virginia. But I was not aware of Will Wagner, unfortunately. But
Infielder.
Infielder. Yeah, shout out to Kaysen, first team All Central Virginia. But but anyway, yeah, what was the last trade we had on the docket here?
Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers.
Oh yes. That was probably the biggest one to happen, considering like
Biggest one happening, and also most underwhelming return.
yeah, exactly. You would have expected this to have the biggest return, but I guess not.
So from what I understand, the deal got reported at 3:56 or at 5:56, 4 minutes before the deadline. So it sounds like this was kind of thrown together at the last minute. I guess the Yankees had a deal in place for Jack Flaherty that involved Nestor Cortez and prospects going to the Tigers. But the Yankees got the physical and backed out of the deal because there was something they didn't like with his health. And I guess that kind of lowered the value on him, which allowed the Dodgers to swoop in at the last minute and say, hey, I understand you guys want to get this guy, out of your organization and get something for him. He's a free agent next year that you might not extend. Here's something so you could say Flaherty. I feel like that's in my mind how it went down. The return was not overwhelming by any means. It was Trey Sweeney and Thyron. Oh gosh, Thayron Liranzo. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's a 20-year-old catcher, which is cool. High A ball at a 182 weighted runs created plus in 3 games. Never mind. A 155 weighted runs created plus in A ball last year for the Dodgers in 94 games.
Yeah, yeah. With with a deal like this, considering with the Tigers, you kind of knew that, especially at this point, Flaherty was probably going to be on the market, considering he is a free agent after this year, and the Tigers don't look to be uber competitive right now. Like, they have a shot, but it's not worth just holding Flaherty hostage for the next 2 months. So they you kind of knew that they wanted to get something out of him. So with time winding down on the deadline, it just gave them less and less leverage, and it just seemed like they might have fumbled this one a little bit by not trading him earlier or putting him on the market earlier, because yeah.
Well, I mean, they did. It just, the physical stuff happened with the Yankees.
Right. Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, like,
it sounds like it's just a very unfortunate happening for the Tigers.
yeah, it definitely seems so. And yeah, shout out to the Dodgers, just getting the good end of the bargain once again.
Seriously.
But yeah, they get the best pitcher on the market, arguably the best player on the market this year in Jack Flaherty, to add to their staff. But yeah, like, just seems kind of, yeah, as you mentioned, unfortunate circumstances for Detroit.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It-
The
it-
Dodgers have obviously dealt with a million different injuries with their pitchers this year. Whether it be Tyler Glasnow very briefly, but he's back now. Whether it be Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who is he out for the year?
He's hoping to come back in like September, I think.
Okay. Emmett Sheehan, my player to watch, got Tommy John surgery in May. Walker Buehler had hip discomfort in June. Dustin May, like, what was it? He like cut his, or what was the thing with Dustin May?
Oh man, I forget.
It was like some crazy.
He's
He had a torn sock.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. See, and he underwent surgery for that too. Like, the poor guy, 2 Tommy John surgeries, torn esophagus. Like, that's brutal. Tony
Yeah.
Gonsolin, they knew was going to be hurt this year, but yeah, I mean, they've just had some tough luck with their pitchers.
Right.
But as of right now, you have a rotation of Tyler Glasnow as a definitive ace. Jack Flaherty as a legitimate number 2, and then some order of Clayton Kershaw, Gavin Stone, and River Ryan, who is a top prospect in the organization. He starts today. He's made a couple starts so far this year, and has looked interesting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and with the Dodgers, like, shout out to the Dodgers, making the right move, as always. But they saw how the playoffs ended up for them last year, and I'm sure that obviously offense had a little bit to do with it, but their starting pitching looked pretty wretched in the playoffs last year, and they went out in the offseason, got the best free agent pitcher, and then the best pitcher on the trade market, and then they go in this trade deadline and they get the best pitcher on the trade market once again. So yeah, they keep continuing to make the best move, and they kind of lucked out here with the Yankees deal falling through, and them kind of being able to get a bit of a bargain for Jack Flaherty. But yeah, once again, they go out and just get the best guy, because that's what winning teams try to do.
I just learned this now, well, unrelated, but I mentioned River Ryan, who is a Dodgers prospect. He's made 2 starts. Has looked pretty good so far. He has an 0.82 ERA, and is, according to Fangraphs, the number 2 prospect in the organization. He was traded from the Padres for Matt Beattie.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, what
I
a trade.
I don't really remember much of
Name?
Matt Beattie on the Padres.
I remember him on the was he on the playoff roster for the 2020 Dodgers at all?
Matt
Probably not,
Beattie.
right? Yeah. No, he was.
Yeah.
He was on the NLCS roster. He didn't play in the World Series, but he did play. He had 3 plate appearances against the Braves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember him.
Wow. Wow.
He's a future. I haven't heard that name in years. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I had on that trade though.
Yeah, and Flaherty had a good performance. I think 6 shutout innings,
Yep.
7 strikeouts. Most importantly, as that was over 6.5. So shout out to him. But yeah,
One of the best pitchers this year with strikeout to walk numbers.
oh yeah, I mean, greatly increased strikeout rate. It's a good amount over 30%, and because of that, his FIP is way down, and because of that, his ERA is way down, and that's why he's so valuable. Yeah, so that does it for trade talk, unless there was anything else that came to mind.
Nope.
All right. So yeah, now
There's a lot more that happened, but it would take us
Yeah.
way too long to get into everything.
yeah, exactly. We don't want to talk about the Luis Garcia to the Red
Angels
Sox.
reliever, 37-year-old reliever.
We don't want to talk about Quinn Priester. Yeah, no, I think we're good with that.
Oscar
So
Rosenbaum went to the Mets. How does this change the
Yep.
trajectory of the franchise?
Yeah, he's gonna blow a game, and you know the angry guy's gonna get angry at him, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that does it for trade talk. Now we move on to players to highlight, where we will start with the lows so we can end with the highs with our Sunday, August 4th, 2024 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats, he's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, that's right. For my slightly alarming today, I'm talking about a guy who's been kind of one of the faces of the league over the last 2 years, ever since he made his debut in 2022, and had what I considered a down year last year, even though it really wasn't. I was just kind of hoping for more out of him, but certainly hasn't been doing well recently. I'm talking about Adley Rutschman, because he has struggled quite a bit for the Orioles since June 26th. He is slashing 143, 270, 65 for a 539 OPS, a 56 weighted runs created plus, in minus 0.2 among the 172 qualifiers in this span. Adley ranks 2nd worst in batting average. He ranks 2nd worst in slugging, 4th worst in OPS, 5th worst in weighted runs created plus, and tied for 10th worst in F4. And a lot of this is because he has a 136 BABIP, which is the 2nd worst. And 136 is very low. Does it deserve to be that low? No, but it certainly deserves to be low because of everything that I'm about to tell you. His expected batting average is 233, and he is batting 143. So before the span, his average exit velocity was 89.6 miles per hour, but in this span, it is down to 86.2 miles an hour. So about 3.5 miles an hour it is down. His average exit velocity on fly balls has gone from 91.7 miles per hour before the span to just 88.9 miles per hour in this span. His line drive rate has also gone from 28.6% before the span to just 20.2% in this span, which explains the low expected batting average. As displayed by this, he has just struggled to make the right kind of contact. Getting more specifically into it with bat tracking, his squared up rate on contact has gone from 38% to 30.3% in the span. That is the rate of times where he has made contact with the ball, and it has been at least 80% of the potential exit velocity given the bat speed and pitch speed. His blast rate on contact has gone from 14.6% to just 6.5%, which means it is squared up and a fast swing of at least 75 miles per hour. and that's gone from 14% to 6%. His sweet spot rate has also gone from 40.6% before the span to just 32.1% in this span. 31% of his batted balls in total in this span have been fly balls that were not barrels. That is the 8th highest rate among the 245 hitters with at least 50 batted balls in this span. And he is hitting and slugging .038 on such batted balls, no home runs. And that is, again, 31% of his batted balls. Additionally, his pop-up rate has gone from 3.9% before the span to 10.7% in this span. He had 10 pop-ups in his first 251 batted balls this year, and he has 9 in his last 84 batted balls. So Adley Rutschman has been struggling to make the right kind of contact. He's making weaker contact. He's popping it up more. The strikeouts and walks have been fine. He just isn't getting the barrel on the ball as much as he has been in the past, and because of that, he is getting a slightly alarming.
Yeah, Adley Rutschman.
Slightly alarming.
My MVP pick is not working out well. Yeah, my slightly alarming. We are staying at the backstop position as Will Smith, the catcher for the Dodgers, has also been struggling. A little bit of a smaller sample size than Adley Rutschman, though. In his last 15 games, Will Smith is hitting 140 with a 404 OPS. Out of 181 qualifiers in the span, Will Smith's average is 7th lowest, and his slugging and OPS are both 3rd lowest. And expected numbers wise, it is also pretty bad. Out of 157 hitters, out of 157 hitters with 250 plus pitches seen in the span, his expected batting average is 6th lowest, and his expected slugging and expected WOBA are both the lowest. And a lot of this has to do with him making a lot less contact. His strikeout rate has gone from 17% before the span to 34% in the span. It is doubled over his last 15 games. And out of 181 qualifiers, his strikeout rate is the 7th highest. A large part of that just naturally has to do with him, missing the ball more, as silly as that sounds. But his whiff rate has gone from 20% to 30% in this span. And also along with him missing the ball, he's also just a little bit less powerful. His bat speed has gone from 68.0 miles per hour to 67.1 miles per hour. And his average exit velocity has gone from 90.3 miles per hour to 86.9 miles per hour. So, hitting the ball softer, also hitting the ball on the ground more. His ground ball rate has gone from 30% to 46%, from well below average to actually above average now. Also, his line drive rate has gone from 22% to 11%. Out of 290 hitters with 25 plus batted balls in the span, his line drive rate is 17th lowest. Also, his sweet spot rate naturally has gone from 39% to 20%. And out of 290 hitters, his sweet spot rate is also 17th lowest. And also, he is hitting more higher fly balls. His percentage of batted balls at 35 plus degrees of launch angle has gone from 27% to 34%. And he is 1 for 12 on those batted balls. 35 degrees or higher typically is a fly out. If it's a home run, it has to be hit very, very hard. But typically that is a fly out. And out of 290 hitters, his rate of batted balls at 35 plus degrees is 24th highest. It's not a good category to be highly ranked in, as he obviously is 1 for 12 on those types of batted balls. Lastly, with Will Smith, his barrel rate has gone from 12% before the span to 0%. He has no barrels in the span, and largely because of that, he has 1 extra base hit and 0 home runs in his last 65 plate appearances. So yeah, Will Smith, who was actually had some improvements this year, was doing pretty well, has taken a step back in his last 15 games, and because of that, he is getting a
Slightly alarming.
All right, so 2 catchers getting the highlight for slightly alarming, but now we will go from the lows to the highs, where we are talking players or subjects that have been outperforming expectations with our Sunday, August 4th, 2024 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
And he is getting a...
How about that?
Yeah, for my how about that, I'm crossing a team off the list, and for good reason, because this is a how about that really just encapsulates everything that I love about a hitter that's doing well. I'm talking about Eugenio Suarez, who has been a tremendous hitter for the Arizona Diamondbacks over the last month. Since July 6th, he is slashing 326, 375, 733 for an 1108 OPS, a 199 weighted runs created plus, and 1.5 fWAR. Among the 181 qualifiers in the span, he ranks 8th in slugging percentage, 8th in OPS, 10th in weighted runs created plus, and tied for 10th in fWAR. He is tied for the major league lead in home runs during the span with 10. So no one has hit more home runs than Eugenio Suarez since July 6th. Before the span, his strike rate was at 29%, and in the span, it is down to just 25%. So not the biggest decrease, but he's making a little bit more contact, and he's making much better contact as well. Before the span, his line drive rate was 26.5%, but in the span, it is up to 34.4%. That is tied for the 8th highest among the 165 hitters with at least 50 batted balls in this span. He also has a 23.7% ground ball rate in the span, and that is the second lowest on that same list. His average exit velocity has gone from 87.3 miles per hour before the span to 91.7 miles per hour in this span. That is about a 4 mile per hour increase. His squared up rate on contact has gone from 26.7% to 33.9%, and his blast rate on contact has gone from 10.6% to 18.6%. So that's an 8% increase. And this is really where things get exciting here. Eugenio Suarez has hit 21 fly balls in the span, and they have an average exit velocity of 100 on the dot miles per hour. That is the 6th highest among the 237 with at least 10 fly balls since July 6th. But not only is he hitting his fly balls very hard, he's pulling them. Chris, do you remember when I gave you that quiz a few weeks ago? What is the percent of fly balls league-wide that are pulled?
It's about 26%.
26% on the dot. Eugenio Suarez's pull rate on fly balls in the span among 21 fly balls is 71.4%. 15 out of 21 fly balls that he has hit have been pulled. That is the highest pull rate on fly balls on the list of 237 hitters with at least 10 fly balls. 14.1% of his batted balls have been pulled fly balls over 100 miles an hour. 14%. That is the highest in the majors. 46.9% of his batted balls have been pulled fly balls or line drives. Not only is that the highest in the majors, but the next highest is at 32.9%. That is a 14% difference between first and second in percent of batted balls being pulled, fly balls, or line drives. His sweet spot rate in this span is 48.9%, the second highest in the majors, and 34.4% of his batted balls in this span have been pulled and in the sweet spot. That is the highest rate in the majors. So Eugenio Suarez is making the best contact that he could possibly make, and because of that, he has been one of the best hitters in the league. Over the last month, the Diamondbacks have propelled themselves comfortably into a wild card spot, largely because of his contributions, and for that, he is getting a how about that.
Yes, Eugenio Suarez.
How about that?
And
if you have chance, look at his spray chart on fly balls since July 6th. It is like I almost started crying.
And that is actually an ARR comeback special, as I put him as a slightly alarming.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. I'm rocking my pants, putting suckers in fear.
You did, okay.
But as we were hinting at who we were selecting, and we were worried we were going to do 3 consecutive overlaps on how about that. That is not the case, because my how about that is one of your former slightly alarmings.
Oh, it's 2 comeback specials.
It is 2 comeback specials today, and mine is Jake Berger, who very quickly has made a turnaround. Obviously had a very down year up to this point, but in his last 17 games, Jake Berger is hitting .359 with a 12.19 OPS. out of 184 qualifiers in this span. His slugging ranks 6th, and his OPS ranks 8th. Out of 181 hitters with 200 plus pitches seen in the span, his expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA all rank 5th. And yeah, part of this success in both actual and expected categories is him hitting the ball harder. His average exit velocity has gone from 90.5 miles per hour to 95.2 miles per hour, 4.7 mile per hour difference there. Out of 181 hitters, his average exit velocity ranks 7th. Also, something I just looked up, I actually don't have in the prep, is I believe I looked it up correctly. Maybe the numbers are off, but his squared up rate has gone from 43% before the span to 72% in this span. Does 72% sound like a squared up rate that is possible, or is that?
Yeah, that's
okay.
possible.
Yeah, 72. It's gone from 43% to 72%. Because yeah, his bat speed has actually gone down. It's just he is getting more bang for his buck when he is making contact, which is really, really good. Kind of the epitome of what you want with hitting is getting the bang for your buck. And also his barrel rate, along with his average exit velocity going up, his barrel rate has gone from 10% before the span to 19% in the span. And out of 137 hitters with 40 plus batted balls in the span, his barrel rate is 7th highest. Jake Burger's ground ball rate has also changed drastically. Pretty much all of his angle related statistics have changed drastically. His ground ball rate has gone from 51% to 23%. His line drive rate has gone from 17% to 33%, and his fly ball rate has gone from 22% to 40%. And along with that, his pop-up rate, despite his fly ball rate going up so high, his pop-up rate has decreased from 9% before the span to 4% in the span. And because of all that, his sweet spot rate has gone from 26% to 42%. And out of 137 hitters with 40 plus batted balls in the span, his ground ball rate is 5th lowest. Line drive rate is 15th highest, and fly ball rate is the 7th highest. So Jake Burger has kind of reminded us why he was so valuable last year in having such a dominant stretch of 17 games. He's putting the ball on the ground way less, putting the ball in the air way more, hitting the ball harder, and just getting his more bang for his buck in general when he does swing the bat. So Jake Burger is getting a.
How about that?
Very nice. So only 3 teams remain on the list. It is the Pirates, the Cardinals, and the Blue Jays.
Yeah, it's we can do this. We decreased the amount of episodes we do per week, but that does not hold us back from potentially crossing all the teams off the list here. Hopefully. It's not the end of the world if we don't, but it would be pretty cool if we did it. So yeah, that does it for players to highlight. Now we will get on to the final category, or the final topic. Segment. Yes, that is the correct word. Baseball Savant Trivia. It is Daniel's turn to make up a game for me.
That's right, Chris, and I have done exactly that. Today's game is very much, I think, a spinoff of the one you made for me last week with guessing the pitch arsenals.
There we go.
This one, I'm shifting it more to position players. We are playing guess the history of percentile rankings. So I am going to show you, I'm going to show you the the list of percentile rankings each year that a player has been in the majors, or at least in the StatCast era. The player pool that we have to choose from is hitters with at least 400 plate appearances this year. So if you want to go to Fangraphs, load up that filter there. There's 95 such players. We have 6 that I will be presenting today. And it'll be the same thing. You're gonna hopefully use deductive reasoning to try and narrow down a couple of answers and go with whatever your guess may be.
Yeah, I'll be going to Baseball Reference and doing and sorting by plate appearances so that the expected WOBA isn't
good point.
Staring at me.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point.
400 plate appearances this year.
Yep.
Yeah,
there should be 95.
Yep, 95 with Carlos Santana just cracking the barrier.
All right, so without further ado, let's get started with player number 1.
Player number 1. So it is someone who's been in the league since 2021, but clearly did not really qualify for anything in 2021. So mostly been in the league for 3 years, since 2022. Very good defensively. That is what's popping out to me first. 94th percentile in 2022 in outs above average, 96th percentile in 2023, and 88th percentile this year. Very high walk rate as well. Very low whiff rate, it appears, and very low chase rate. Man, this is a really interesting person. Yeah, low expected batting average numbers, but very high expected on base percentage numbers. So who is someone who oddly enough, good strikeout numbers though. So this is okay. This is an interesting guy because typically, if someone has a low expected batting average but high expected on base percentage, they're going to have high walk rate but also high strikeout rate. So this is really interesting. Yeah, their exit velocity numbers are clearly low. Barrel rate numbers are low. So someone who gets on base but doesn't have much in the bag necessarily offensively, but very good defensively. Yeah, and outs above average doesn't necessarily mean they have to play a premier defensive position. You could be an elite defensive third baseman and have really high outs above average, but not necessarily high defensive value on regarding WAR. So, all right, this is interesting. So we have 95 available candidates as I'm going to scroll through some of them now. Yeah, so like very good strikeout and walk numbers, but not great exit velocity, barrel rate numbers. The leader in plate appearances is Jarren Duran. I just don't believe his outs above average are gonna line up with that. He's been kind of up and down as a defender, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm gonna kind of take him off the list. Yeah, because he popped out immediately because he's kind of started in 2021. So he would have made sense. I'm looking at all these guys, um, a lot of them are uh are people who started before 2021. And just looking at the numbers here, where's his xWOBA at? xWOBA is pretty average, so I imagine his offensive production has been fairly average, if it, winds up correctly. But great walk and strikeout numbers. So that is eye-popping. It's very interesting. So guys who started in 2021, a guy who popped out to me was Ryan McMahon, but I think he's been in the league longer than since 2021, but it could bite me in the end. Yeah, like guy who gets strikeouts, or guy who doesn't strike out, walks a lot, but is not getting barrels. So maybe I should be looking at low sluggings on this list. Like who has a decently high on base percentage but decently low slugging percentage. That could probably lead me in a good direction. Kyle Schwarber. No, outs above average does not work for Kyle Schwarber. And he's been in the league far longer than 2021. I'm in a bit of a hole here. I just feel like this is just a very unique player. So I feel like once I realize who it is, if I do end up realizing who it is, it's gonna be like the alarms are gonna be going off here. Just for time's sake, since I haven't found anyone obvious, I'm gonna go with Brendan Donovan.
It was actually Ha-Sung Kim.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he had 298 plate appearances in 2021, which I guess was not enough to qualify that year.
Okay, yeah.
Because that was what had you hung up on him.
I guess he wasn't like a full-time starter until 2022. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wasn't
Good. I mean,
considering
good.
that.
Like got the archetype though. Like
Yeah,
Brendan Donovan, very, very similar player.
right. Yeah.
All right. So now we are going to move on to player number 2.
Yeah, I forgot Ha-Sung Kim was kind of a utility guy to start and was kind of off the bench. All right, so we have a guy who's been around for the whole StatCast era. He hits the ball hard, except for this year, he has hit the ball less hard. So that's a bit of a clue. Very good, always very good expected on-base percentage numbers for the most part. Average exit velocity was impressive, but not necessarily as impressive now. Oh, I just saw I mistook exit velocity for max exit velocity. So he can hit the ball hard.
Mhm.
He has a great capability, but he doesn't always do that. He's 26th percentile in exit 26th percentile in average exit velocity this year. He has good strikeout and walk numbers typically. Low chase rates, solid speed. Um, solid speed, uh, solid defense for the most part. It used to be worse, but now it's better. Um, so based on the speed, it's like I'm kind of ruling out like first baseman. This is probably someone who plays a more valuable defensive position um and has a full capability of hitting the ball hard. And he's been around for the entire StatCast era. Um and Yeah, based on the expected WOBA numbers, he's always been a very good hitter. He's 66th percentile this year, but he's had years in the 90th percentile or higher. Um, and as recently as 2022, he was 79th percentile in expected WOBA. He's slightly dropped off over the last couple of years, so um, that is interesting. So now let's go to the pool. Let's go to the pool. So we gotta go with guys who have been playing for the entire StatCast era. So that eliminates a lot of people in this pool, I would imagine. It's not going to be Juan Soto, even though it would be pretty obvious if Juan Soto was being displayed here. Not Ohtani, not Judge, not Bobby Witt Jr. Maybe Marcus Semien, I don't know. Uh, Not Vladdy Jr., not Ezekiel Tovar. Definitely not him. Um, yeah, always above average expected WOBA. So I'm not going to put Jose Altuve because he kind of dips in and out. He doesn't necessarily always have the expected numbers to go with it. Um, so we're looking at guys who have been around the entire StatCast era. I don't think Matt Chapman has been around the entire StatCast era. Um, Neither is Brandon Nimmo. Um, Jose Ramirez, I know his expected WOBA is below average this year, so um, I don't think it's him. Uh, we have Teoscar Hernandez, who has not been around for the entire StatCast era, I believe. Bohm, definitely not. Christian Walker, no. Matt Olson started his career in like 2018 or 19. Alex Bregman started his career couple like in 16 or 17, so it's not been around the entire time. Kyle Schwarber. That's a candidate. Although let's look at the walk rates. Not I don't think the walk rate is high enough for it to be him. And the outs above average are way too good, so it's not Kyle Schwarber. We are doing process of elimination here. Looking at guys who have been around for a while. It's not Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman, uh, Freddie Freeman's hitting numbers are way too good for it to be that one. Castellanos, he's been around for the entirety of this, but outs above average are too good. He's not that good of a defender. Let's take a look. We're getting near. I think we're getting near the answer here, considering not a lot of players in this league have been around for 10 years. Josh Bell, I don't think that can be him. Salvi. Probably, I mean, considering, yeah, above average walk rates, no. Ian Happ started his career in 2017, I'm pretty sure. Rosa Reyna, yeah, started his career way later. Yeah, looking at Arenado, outs above average are not good enough. Manny Machado, once again, outs above average are probably not good enough. If I had to guess, yeah, no. Manny Machado would not have 23rd percentile outs above average. Unless that's a trick. George Springer. That's actually an intriguing thing to look at. Outs above average is kind of up and down. Offensive numbers have been very good in the past. Ooh, 2019, he was 96th percentile in expected WOBA. That was his best year. But I don't know if he was really that good in 2020. So that throws, yeah. Okay, whoever this is had a wonderful 2020, I'm now realizing, because that is 90th percentile across the board in expected numbers. 89th percentile barrel rate. So I should be looking for someone who had a monster 2020 because I imagine this guy did. This is tough. Considering all the options, it's kind of tough. I think the clue I'm looking for now is someone with above average speed who had a really good 2020 season. If they they qualified for percentiles, so I mean, what are we looking for here? Yeah, I don't have a better guess. So I'll just go her. Soler, I'm realizing could have qualified in I just don't know about him. Since I'm running out of options here, I'm gonna go George Springer as my guess.
Well, there is no better guess than George Springer because that is absolutely correct.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Connecticut's own.
Yeah, shout out New Britain.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Yeah, all right, there we go. Okay, I'm glad my imagination did not lead me in an opposite direction. Because
For what it's worth, slashed 265, 359, 540, 899 in 2020.
Okay, I grouped him with a bunch of other Astros who had bad 2020s, but I guess he was not one of them.
He was the outlier, yeah. But yeah, no, you got it. It was George Springer.
There we go. Awesome.
Good job.
Yeah, because Correa, Bregman, and Altuve all sucked in 2020, but I forgot that he did well. Glad I didn't talk myself out of that one. All right.
I'm glad you didn't either, because as soon as you mentioned him and said that's a candidate, I'm like, he has to get this, right? Like, he can. And then you said Seager's immediately the leader of the clubhouse. I was like, Chris, come on, you know it's not Corey Seager. And I looked at the exact same cell that you did, 29th percentile average exit velocity last year. It's like, he's got to see that and realize there's no way it's Corey Seager.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're using the correct deductive reasoning. You're making all the logistical, and yeah, I mean, you got Ha-Seong Kim wrong, but you got the correct archetype. So we move on to player number 3.
Player number 3 started their career in 2017 and did not really qualify at all in 2019. They played in 2019 as they qualify for speed, but that is the only thing they qualify for.
Max EV.
And max exit velocity as well. Where they were 87th percentile. So they hit the ball harder. Low chase rates, above average speed their whole career. Started out with 89th percentile speed. Below average defense for most of their career, except for 2022 and 2020. Pretty solid expected numbers, at least the past couple years. Elite walk rates the past couple years. So that's interesting. And then not the best strikeout numbers throughout their career. Started out really, really bad. Okay, so not any particular years sticking out necessarily, except for maybe the last couple because those rates are that significant. Um, but yeah, always hitting the ball fairly hard. Usually getting some barrels. Um, usually getting some walks, not chasing, as I guess that goes with the walks. And below average defense. And they've been around since 2017. My first thought since it was 2017 was Devers, but he doesn't have a random offensive resurg or defensive resurgence in 2019, and he doesn't qualify in 2019. So it's not Devers. Yeah, above average speed, great walk rates the past couple years. So that's interesting. Um, the maybe looking at guys with a high amount of walks this year. I'm not gonna sort by walks, but I'll just look among the sorted plate appearance people. Um, ooh, this guy, Ian Happ looks fairly intriguing because he definitely started his career in 2017 and I'm sure qualified. And he's had really good walk rates. Outs above average has been fairly up and down, and the speed I think is I don't think he's slow, so it makes sense if he's like around 60th percentile. And he did have a stretch where he was injured, I'm pretty sure. So I think 2019 is that year where he was injured. And yeah, no particular years stick out. Um, and yeah, it does seem like kind of a model of consistency. So I'm not even I'm not even gonna look at the rest of the candidates. My guess is Ian Happ.
That is a freaking masterclass, Chris. Absolutely well done. It is Ian Happ. And yeah, I mean, didn't even look at any other candidates. You saw it and you were like, that's the guy right there.
Yeah, I mean, I scrolled. He was I'm sorted out by plate appearances, and he was number 55, but I didn't have to look beyond 55 because it's just his career started in 2017, fairly consistent. I know he got injured at some point where he was unable to play for like a good amount of the year. Yeah, I think it works out. And shout out to the guy. You can plug him in for between 3 and 4 WAR about every year. And that's
Yep.
what he's doing this year. So yeah, he just keeps going, keeps doing his
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, if you
Um,
get him in like the 8th round of your F4 draft, that's a guy you want to keep the whole year.
yeah, you definitely don't want to sub him out for someone injury prone or who hasn't done well in a while. And then replace that guy 2 days before he comes off the IL. But yeah, exactly that. All right,
You're 2 for 3.
two for
Done a
three.
nice
There we
job.
go.
And we're halfway done here, so let's see player number 4.
Player number 4. Um, Someone who started their career in 2022 and started getting significant playing time in 2023. Um, we're looking at low whiff rates, very low strikeout rates, high expected batting average naturally, but also high expected WOBA. So they're a good hitter. Whoever this person is a good hitter, not a good fielder. Third percentile outs above average. Probably gets a lot of DH time because they didn't qualify for outs above average last year, or potentially they're a catcher, but and maybe got some time at other positions um this year. But I don't know. That's an interesting thing to consider, but elite strikeout rate does not walk a lot. So the difference between batting average and on base percentage is probably going to be low between on this type of player. Hits the ball at an above average exit velocity. Didn't barrel up the ball last year, but is barreling up the ball this year. Okay, so um, someone who probably has a high expected batting average, and very slow. This person is probably not going to have a lot of stolen bases. So yeah, this is an interesting player. Like this is how I imagine like almost Tony Gwynn was late in his career. Like just did nothing except hit the ball, didn't walk, didn't run very fast, didn't play defense, but he just hit the ball. Um, and not necessarily far, except this guy is what, 74th? Yeah. Or let me go back to the zoom here. Yeah, 64th percentile in barrel rate. So that's, yeah, this is interesting. It's a good hitter. Whoever this is, they're a good hitter. Doesn't seem very defensively valuable nor valuable on the bases, as they are like 10th percentile in sprint speed. So yeah, and it's someone who just joined the league. They're very new to it. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of the potential candidates here. And I'm kind of almost leaning toward catcher. If it's not a catcher, it's a DH. It has to be a DH or catcher, considering they did not qualify in outs above average last year, but they qualified in everything else. So someone slow who has a high batting average, and very low strikeout rate. This is interesting. This is very interesting. This kind of reminds me of like Alejandro Kirk a little bit, but he was an all-star in 2022, so he would have qualified. And I don't think he's gotten 400 plate appearances this year either. But it's like that Alejandro Kirk archetype of just a big slow guy who also makes a lot of contact and probably gets on base a decent amount. So whoever this person is, they're an interesting archetype, no doubt. So yeah, all right. We are back going after a brief pause. Not that the audience knows, but there was a brief pause there. But yeah, I did some digging. I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily cheating, but I just sorted by batting average, and I think I got a bit of a clue.
I never said there's a rule against sorting by certain things.
Okay, that's good. And I think I have a leader in the clubhouse, and I think I might just take it. I'm gonna guess Yiner Diaz.
The answer we were looking for was Alec Burleson. Good guess though.
Wow, okay. I did not know
Yeah.
it was that slow.
I know. Yeah, I think that's going to have been the hardest one. That one was tough.
Do you want to stop entering full screen mode when no. Yeah, yeah, that's surprising to me. Yeah, that's surprising. But yeah, he was on the list, and I saw him, and I saw the difference between batting average and on base percentage, and I saw his strikeouts were low. And I was like, nah.
No,
But
that's fair. I mean, because he's a Cardinal, like he gives off the vibe of like a Brendan Donovan type.
yes,
Like
indeed.
those two seem very interchangeable, but Burleson definitely a little bit, tiny bit more on the power side,
Yeah, that is true.
especially this year.
So yeah, two for four so
Yeah, and
far.
now we get into player number 5.
Player number 5. Player number 5 played a little bit in 2016 and 17, but not enough to qualify. Really started getting going in 2018, and has, for the most part, been a very good hitter throughout their career. 90th percentile expected WOBA or better in 3 seasons, and that doesn't even include like 2020. So he's had 3 definitely really good years, 2019, 2021, and 2023. Hits the ball very hard usually. Outs above average have been up and down, more down as of late. He's slow, so he's not really a threat on the bases, probably. And he's really started his getting going in terms of playing time in 2018. So a guy who gets a lot of barrels, hits the ball hard, just generally good at the plate, who really started getting going in 2018. Oh, am I thinking of the right person? I started going toward, well, Devers didn't play in 2016. For some reason, my brain always wants to go to Devers, but he did not play in 2016, and also outs above average are a little too good. I know and he had that surge in 2019, but
But it was even better than 94th percentile that
it
year.
was even better than 94th percentile. But yeah, he swung way lower before and after that. Um 2018 and yeah, just lots of barrels, 100th percentile in barrel rate. Or well, that's weird. 100th percentile in total barrels last year, 96th percentile in barrel rate. Um, this year the expected batting average is lower. He strikes out more than usual, more than the average hitter, it seems. Um, whiff rate is a bit higher as well. Slow. So yeah, as our former commander in chief would say, a big, powerful guy. So yeah, we're looking at guys with 500 or 400 plus plate appearances. Matt Olson looks somewhat intriguing. He's slower. Um, lots of barrels. Fantastic year last year. And is doing worse this year. He does kind of check off all the boxes there. Great walk rate last year, like always decent walk rate. Up and down outs above average wise. Like I know he stood out in 2019. And it's just a matter of like if he qualified in 2018 or not, if he qualified for these percentiles, and he may have. He's my best guess. So I'm gonna go with Matt Olson.
And you would be correct in doing so.
Yes, there we
Yeah,
go.
I the entire time I was like, oh my God, Chris. Look at the 2023. Look at the expected batting average this year.
Yep, yep. All right. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know
I was
why.
just ready for you to have that moment of just like, it's Matt Olson, obviously. But no, you got it. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I think maybe I'm just being too careful here. I'm just
Yeah.
like
Well, you've already clinched at least getting half of them. So let's see if you could finish with a winning record here. We're on to our last one, player number 6.
player number 6. So they had a lot of this player had a lot of time on the bench to start their career and then ramped up in playing time recently starting in 2022 where they had a 92nd percentile expected WOBA. Has had good walk rates his whole career and very low chase rates. That obviously correlates. Great barrel rate in 2022, not great barrel rate in 2023, great barrel rate now. Hard hit rate, very consistent. Exit velocity has dropped off. Or no, max exit velocity. I'm confusing the two. Average exit velocity has been fairly consistently good. But barrels have been inconsistent. Outs above average wise, they've been a good defender, not great defender for the most part. Average defender this year. I imagine they have 0 this year. Okay. Low bat speed, but high swing length. So they kind of go for the downs, it appears, and it rewards them with a 92nd percentile barrel rate. Strikeout rate was good last year and bad this year. Walk rates have been good throughout their career. Okay, we're going in with those clues. Speed wise, okay, this is weird. Their speed was good and now it's bad. All right, this is very interesting. Who has historically been good at, I don't know. The clues here are interesting, but maybe the largest clue is the fact that they were on the bench for like 4 years and now all of a sudden are a fairly relevant part of their team, whoever they're playing for. So yeah, I guess I'm looking for someone probably on the younger side, um, who has been around since 2018, but started getting significant playing time in 2022. So, that no, it's probably not Yandy Diaz because I think his numbers would be better last year. I think I have a decent guess, and maybe I'm not expanding the options too much, but this guy just popped out for whatever reason. And I'm gonna check his page once again to see if it would make sense. His expected numbers might be a little too good. Or these expected numbers might be too good. But I'm gonna go with Taylor Ward.
Chris, you finished off the day going 4 for 6. Taylor
There we
Ward was correct. That is right. Yeah, I was really hoping again there would be that moment where you were like, this guy makes sense, and you had it that time. Yeah, Taylor Ward popped off in 2022 after not existing for a while. Yeah, you nailed it. 4 for 6 today.
There we go. You know,
Very nice
it's
showing
good.
today.
Good things come to those who wait, and I'm sure I'm gonna edit a lot of the pauses out, but that took though all 6 of those answers took me a significant amount of time, but
At least an hour.
yeah. Yes, indeed. So yeah, yeah, that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, or check out some of those Savant pages, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. We hope you, subscribe to that. Check out all the fun aspects of the YouTube channel. Check out the playlist. We have, full archive. Obviously we're on 319 episodes right now. We've got some guest interviews in the past. We've got a baseball history series in the past that ended about 3.5 years ago, but still exists, still remains fairly evergreen. I'm sure some of the stats are outdated, but still a good capsule of time for some of these players and teams. And yeah, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gian, to follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.